Destroyed my happiness, my mother-in-law shouted, tying me up in our house set for demolition. I was helpless. Then I heard my twin's voice. Hello there, what's happening? Ouch, that stings. Where am I right now? What's the plan for me? One particular day, my husband's mother ambushed me from behind and trapped me in utter darkness. She did boxing lessons in the past, so lifting a woman like me wasn't a problem. I was completely helpless because my eyes, mouth, and every single limb were tied up. Silence. You know what? It's your doing, your disrespect. How dare you, just a daughter-in-law, stand up to me? Ever since you became part of this family, you've destroyed my happiness. Everything, absolutely everything bad, is because of you. With those words, my mother-in-law left me unable to move and went away somewhere. In this situation, where I couldn't see a thing or yell for assistance, my worry grew intensely. It quickly became terror. What do I do now? Is this where I die, with no one ever finding me? I still desperately wanted to have amazing days with my husband and have a family. But could my life really end because of my mother-in-law? The instant I thought about that, overwhelming fear washed over me again, and I kept making silent cries. Nobody heard my cries. My name is Erin, and I'm a regular housewife. I got married to Ron a few years ago, and our life has been pretty great until now. I met Ron at the office where I started working right after college, and we started a relationship then. Even though there were some tough times before we got married, the important thing is that I'm happily married right now. Lately, we made a choice that will probably make our happiness even stronger. We're buying our own house. This wasn't just any ordinary dwelling. It was a house tailored specifically to our desires. The notion that homeownership equals sheer bliss might seem a little outdated, but having the chance to pick our floor plan and design a home just for us is a significant achievement, and having the good fortune to do so fills me with immense joy. Apartments have their perks, but if we're going to make a home somewhere, wouldn't a house be preferable? Ron, who spent his childhood in his parents' house and had always lived in standalone homes, was immediately on board with building our own place. Once we made the decision, things sped up. Only a few days after deciding on building, we were already going over blueprints and all the specifications with the builder, and the plans kept progressing. Finally, the house was completely finished. That day, we showed up to get the keys to our newly finished house. We weren't the only ones eager to check out the new place. My in-laws expressed a desire to come as well, so they came along with us. Frankly, I felt a bit uneasy about their presence. Despite living apart from my in-laws and only seeing them every once in a while, meaning I don't know them all that well yet, I can tell a few things. While there's nothing especially wrong with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law is very judgmental. She tends to focus on the negative in everything, pointing out all the things she dislikes. When I made the decision to marry Ron and met his folks for the first time, his father was so sweet, telling me to please look after his boy. However, Ron's mom constantly found fault with me, making remarks such as, "Isn't there someone better for him, and can that slender frame even carry healthy bobbies?" I get that it's normal to judge your son's choice of a wife from different angles, but surely there are kinder ways to share those worries. Specifically regarding my physique, she'd still say things like eat more to gain weight, or suggest I do strength training, even after we were married, every time we saw each other. Considering my mother-in-law, she actually had a surprisingly strong, healthy-looking figure for a woman her age. When I quizzed Ron about his mother's robust appearance, it turned out that her family had been boxers for generations. Ron even did boxing himself until the end of high school, which clarified his own good physical shape. I guess that's the key to physical prowess in athletic families. Maybe because of these beliefs, my mother-in-law doesn't like my body type. Furthermore, if her only worry was my well-being, that would be one thing, but her actual focus is on the children I might have. I'm going to make my grandchild into an amazing boxing champion. That's her dream. I've had to listen to that same line over and over again. I haven't even gotten pregnant yet. With a mother-in-law like that, I knew she would find fault with our new place. She said, "There's no space here big enough to train a boxer." So where exactly is our new space going to be? Although we're not sharing a home presently, we're planning to in the time ahead, isn't that right? Plus, this whole house gives off a dated vibe, you know. I mean, hidden storage compartments beneath the kitchen floor. Do they even put those in contemporary homes? Could it be, Erin, that you possess absolutely no sense of style? That's precisely what my husband's mother stated after she walked in and surveyed our recently constructed home. Why on earth would she say something so disheartening at a moment when my spouse and I are on the verge of beginning our lives together in this house? The only thing that made me feel better was that Ron and his dad were on my side. This is the place where Erin and I will soon reside as a couple. Why do we have to tailor it to your preference, Mom? Besides, we haven't even talked about moving in together, let alone come to any conclusions about it. Don't just make these decisions out of the blue. My father-in-law offered a nod of agreement next to him and threw in his support. That's right, Ron and Aaron generously invited us to view their brand new house today. We ought to be appreciative just for that much. Don't make such unkind remarks. The real reason we invited my in-laws was that my mother-in-law really wanted to see the place. After being reprimanded by Ron and my father-in-law, my mother-in-law conceded, I know, and she quieted down for a bit. Then my father-in-law turned to me and mentioned, by the way, I'm glad you included us, but would you perhaps also want to ask your family to come? It feels a bit off to only host my side of the family. Now that I consider it, I haven't met your sister yet, have I? I'd really like to say hello to her. My father-in-law, likely attempting to lighten the mood, introduced a different subject, although that particular discussion wasn't really something I wanted to get into. I have a family that resides quite a distance away, which makes quick arrangements tricky. There's no pressing deadline, which means I'm considering it for a future date. Now about my sister, honestly, my sister and I aren't the closest. While I stated this, looking down, my father-in-law's expression became regretful, like he'd blurted something out he shouldn't have, and he said he was sorry. No, it's all right, really. There's no need to apologize, I responded with a touch of guilt. I should take responsibility. I regret how I phrased that. There was, nonetheless, a reason it was hard to explain to my in-laws why my sister and I weren't exactly best friends. Consequently, we lapsed back into quiet, and the tour of the new house concluded in an uncomfortable atmosphere. Even though it was a little strange, Ron and I moved all our stuff into the new place and officially began our new lives. It's true, having a bigger house than our old apartment offers a feeling of spaciousness that's really wonderful. We don't have to stress quite as much about loud noises like we did in our apartment, which is much more restful. My mother-in-law mentioned that maybe we could even start thinking about having kids someday. Sure, it's not all sunshine and roses. Cleaning a much larger place is going to be a lot more work, plus expenses like the mortgage and property taxes will be substantial from now on. But I'm sure we'll adjust to all that, and right now, all I'm hoping for is to feel pure, unadulterated happiness. Oh, I really wish things could stay this good forever. However, those kinds of wishes were quickly proven useless, because not long after we settled into our new place, a dark cloud rolled into our world. I found out one day that my father-in-law had been hurt. The explanation was that he was on his routine daily walk. During this walk, he stumbled on some steps located at a pedestrian bridge. It might have been because the rain from the day before hadn't completely disappeared. Thankfully, it wasn't going to be fatal, but he had a cut on his head and his entire body was covered in bruises. Even more concerning, he had broken both of his legs. Though one of them was just a fracture, neither one was in great shape. Because of all this, my father-in-law needed someone to look after him. Just as we were starting to feel relieved that, thank goodness, he would be okay, my mother-in-law saw a chance to suggest that we all live together. She thought it would be tough caring for a husband who couldn't move. Besides, I'm just a delicate woman, right? She seems to think I'm obligated to help them by having us all move in together. She's never called me before now. She has the audacity to claim she is fragile now. Typically, she makes remarks about my body not being good enough, and she always acts like she's better than me. While I'm concerned about my father-in-law's well-being, the idea of living with my mother-in-law is scary in a whole different way. Okay, I understand it's difficult for my mom to care for my dad alone, but whether or not we live together depends on what Aaron thinks, Ron told his mom. It seemed like he was trying to be thoughtful of my feelings, but it just put the decision about cohabitating on me. I just couldn't find the guts to state that I was worried about my father-in-law, but didn't want us all living together. Finally, after a short time, my husband's parents moved into our new home. As anticipated, my mother-in-law began to give me a hard time. Since we all moved and started living together, she unloaded all of the responsibilities for my father-in-law onto me, while she either relaxed in front of the television or went for jogs to stay in shape. If she possessed that much get up and go, taking care of my father-in-law should have been quite easy. She also criticized my work around the house, specifically my cooking. Make meals that are better for his muscles, she'd demand. Isn't there too much fat in this, she'd ask. This is terrible. My mother-in-law would make these remarks and dump everything I cooked into the trash. She would then go to the store close by and come back with chicken and milk. I don't really care if she has specific tastes when it comes to what she eats. Everyone has the right to make their own decisions. But she could just say, I won't eat that, before I made the meal in the first place. My mother-in-law probably gets a kick out of intentionally doing things that upset me. She also tosses my clean clothes into the yard, saying, hanging them like that will wrinkle them. Do it again. Naturally, the clothes that get thrown outside and covered in dirt are all mine, while she carefully rehangs her own clothes, along with those belonging to my father-in-law and Ron. Even after I clean, she still finds issues, pointing out things like, the corners aren't perfect or there are smudges on the desk, and makes me do it all over again, then empties the vacuum cleaner bag all over the floor. Whenever I try to say, please just stop, she immediately snaps back with, you don't have what it takes to be a good wife. Seriously, where does she get this constant berating of her daughter-in-law? Has she been online too much? Despite everything, I was feeling emotionally wrecked. Due to the unfamiliar caregiving combined with my mother-in-law's behavior, I was steadily becoming physically and mentally drained. Around the time my father-in-law was mostly recovered, I finally told Ron, I can't handle this anymore. Although Ron hadn't personally seen her mistreating me because of work and other things, he seemed to realize something was wrong with his mother, from my unusual level of tiredness. I apologize for not listening to your worries earlier. If you've reached your breaking point, let's have my parents move out. Luckily, Dad's injury is mostly healed and their former home is still available. I'll speak with them tomorrow. What? Their old house hadn't sold yet. When I asked Ron about it, it turns out my father-in-law had waited to sell the house, just in case we needed to end the shared living situation. I am so thankful for my father-in-law's consideration. I felt awful about making my father-in-law depart, but I couldn't focus on anything other than safeguarding my own state of mind. The following day, Ron spoke. Mom, I spoke to Erin. Since we're all just people, it's completely normal that some people mesh well and others don't. However, that shouldn't justify tormenting her. If you strongly dislike Erin, we'll conclude this living situation. I apologize, Dad, but please leave. Upon hearing this, my father-in-law seemed to convey, there's nothing to be done. I was curious about my mother-in-law's emotional state as I watched her reaction. I anticipated she'd become furious with me for talking to Ron and unleash a torrent of insults, yet I was completely mistaken. My mother-in-law crumpled to the ground in front of us and started sobbing loudly. No, please don't say such awful things. I was just briefly controlled by something. Truly, I won't repeat that behavior. Please forgive me. Saying this, my mother-in-law bowed down repeatedly in front of us. When it went that far, even I couldn't tell her to depart. I made the decision to forgive my mother-in-law, but I would come to understand that was a mistake. For a period after that, things were more peaceful than before. My father-in-law's injury was fully healed, eliminating the need for care, which made my load lighter. If things continued like this, maybe the harassment I experienced as a daughter-in-law would, one day, become a humorous tale. It was around that time that I started to entertain those optimistic thoughts. Ron informed me one day that he had a business trip planned that would take a week. Now that I think about it, Ron hadn't been gone overnight since my mother-in-law had stopped her tormenting ways. This week might actually be a major test for my mother-in-law and myself. I wondered if she would start bothering me again, now that Ron wouldn't be here to keep an eye on us. Despite my pondering, that critical moment never actually transpired. This was because my in-laws chose to go on a trip of their own while Ron was away. My mother-in-law had said, "You must be worn out from doing all the household chores, right?" She continued. "I thought you should unwind and take it easy while Ron is gone. You likely can't truly relax with us here, correct? Well, it's only for a couple of nights and 3 days anyway." Consequently, it was suddenly arranged that I would be living by myself during Ron's business trip. Nevertheless, it was perfect timing. My sister, whom I barely spoke to anymore, had recently said to me, "I need to discuss something with you. Can we get together?" Usually, if someone you haven't spoken to in ages wants to talk, you're cautious, but for some reason, I felt like this wouldn't be a negative conversation. I wanted to get together right away, but with the housework and living with my in-laws, I had been unable to find the time to meet her. But since I'm going to be alone in the house, I can finally invite my sister over. I'd also wanted to show her our newly built home. When I told her, my sister said yes, so I was about to see her again after all these years. When Ron was leaving for his business trip, he departed for his trip a couple of hours later than normal, going straight to where he was headed. My wife's parents had also finalized their travel plans and departed moments before. Not too long after that, Halia, my sister, arrived at my place. Even though she arrived earlier than expected, it didn't bother me in the slightest. Halia looked exactly as she had years ago. Halia hadn't aged a bit, and it appeared she felt the same way about me. We embraced, remarking on how much time had passed, and then tried to figure out when we'd last seen each other. That's when we realized we had identical phone cases. What a funny twist of fate. Despite the fact that we hadn't had a real conversation in ages, there was still a strong connection between us. Instances like that made it easy to reconnect after such a long separation. The reason for my visit today is... Right as Halia was about to get to the important part of our conversation after I'd given her tea and we sat down, my phone started ringing. It was Ron calling. Halia glanced at me and said I should answer it, so I picked up. "Erin, I'm sorry. I left some important papers I need for the trip in my bedroom. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you bring them to the train station? I really am sorry. Because it sounded serious, I asked Halia, is that okay? It's no problem. It's been ages since we last caught up, so what difference does a little more time make? She said with a laugh. So I told her I'd return in about an hour and then rushed to the station with Ron's paperwork. 1 hour later. When I got back to the house, Halia's shoes were still sitting by the door. I shouted out, I'm here, but Halia didn't answer. I wondered if she had perhaps dozed off. With that thought in mind, I went to the living room, but I didn't see her anywhere. I attempted to call Halia on her cell phone. Then right there in the empty room, Halia's phone started ringing on the table. A few days later, my in-laws came back from their vacation. Ron and I went to meet them as they got back to the house. Why was Ron already back? His business trip was planned to last a week. And Aaron, why are *you here? More than Ron, your expression shows it's odd that I'm even present. My mother-in-law appeared to catch herself and said, that's not what I meant. But when she spotted my sister Halia walking into the living room, she began to sweat and shake, almost like she was having a nightmare. Going back to that day when Halia came over, when I finally got back after bringing Ron's stuff to him, even though her shoes and things like her phone were still here, Halia was gone from the house. Since her phone was still there, calling her was pointless, and her place wasn't close enough for her to get back in an hour. Therefore, contacting her family was also pointless, and anyway, it made no sense that she'd just leave all her stuff behind. I thought maybe she was in the bathroom, so I looked throughout the whole house, but I couldn't find her. Suddenly, I heard some odd noises coming from the kitchen. I went to investigate, and the sound was coming from the crawlspace under the floor. The moment I found the nerve to open it, there was Halia staring back at me. When I questioned her about why she was in such a situation, she shared something that was just unbelievable. I'm pretty sure it was Ron's mom, but the second she got back, she instantly demanded I fetch a vase from the crawl space under the floorboards. I attempted to tell her I wasn't Aaron, but she reacted in a very hostile way. I ended up opening the crawl space, but it was completely empty, and when I attempted to ask what was happening, she grabbed me from behind and tossed me inside. This was bad, so it seemed like my mother-in-law hadn't actually changed for the better. Then she started saying things like, Ron hates me because of you, and how dare you disobey me, just a daughter-in-law, and finally, suffer from starvation until we come back. She took my phone and slammed the door shut. There was no way to open it from the inside, and who knows what could have gone down if you hadn't shown up. That's awful. So if Halia hadn't paid a visit, I would have been stuck down there until my in-laws returned. Actually, Halia and I are identical twins. Despite telling my in-laws I had a sister, I had never mentioned we were twins. So my mother-in-law likely confused Halia with me and locked her inside the crawl space. Since we have the same phone cases, she probably didn't think it belonged to someone else. She must have thought taking the phone would stop me from calling anyone, so she left it on the table. She probably told my father-in-law she'd forgotten something and came back home. Truly, what audacity. The whole reason Halia and I ended up not speaking was that she also developed feelings for Ron when I began seeing him. That situation caused us to become opponents, essentially battling for Ron's affection and seeing one another as adversaries. This ultimately caused our separation, especially once Ron and I got engaged. But Halia had done some self-reflection and wanted to apologize, only to get tangled in everything because of my mother-in-law. Later, when Ron asked his mother why she did this, she claimed I had planned to lock Aaron in the crawl space before the trip as a way to teach her about rank through intimidation. That's just insane. I've honestly had it this time. Dad, I apologize, but this living arrangement ends here. Take Mom and return home. I'm forbidding Mom from seeing Aaron any longer, and I won't see her either. We are done. Listening to those words, my father-in-law looked like he was thinking there was nothing to be done. Please, I am truly sorry, my mother-in-law began sobbing and knelt down, but no one trusted her anymore. I could report you to the authorities, Mom, but Halia said that wasn't required, so we are just going our separate ways. Leave before I reconsider. Even my mother-in-law seemed to have no option but to comply with Ron once he mentioned the police. She then swiftly began gathering her belongings. The following day, she and my father-in-law left. As a result, I finally had relief from my mother-in-law's constant torment. A few days after that, Halia came to see me once more to explain what she wanted to say that day. Truthfully, the main thing I wanted to discuss with you is, you're getting hitched, aren't you? Halia's expression flashed surprise for a split second, but then she softened and chuckled, admitting I could tell. Ever since we were kids, we'd occasionally felt this strange connection, like we were on the same wavelength. It was easier to pass feelings along when they were really intense, and we could somehow just know what the other one was experiencing. If this was some unique twin thing or just a fluke, who knows, But the fact that we understood each other's emotions made our competition over Ron particularly heated. It was because we knew the other wasn't messing around. Okay, that's all ancient history by now. Ron and I went back to living happily in our own place, and Halia seems to be doing well with her significant other. I figured that would be the end of that particular chapter, but then one day we got some upsetting information about my father-in-law. It turned out he had decided to get a divorce. Ever since Ron broke ties with her, my mother-in-law had become emotionally fragile and prone to losing it, frequently taking out her frustrations on my father-in-law. Since my mother-in-law was unusually forceful compared to other people her age, it was hard for my father-in-law to control her, and after hearing about what she had done to me, his feelings for her had cooled, which led to this choice. And so, to split up all their possessions, they are going to tear down their old home, sell the property, and convert it all into cash. Ron, if you want to see the house one last time, come over right away. I also know that my mother-in-law isn't doing well mentally, leading me to believe she'll be admitted to a care center. I tell myself not to stress over it. Honestly, when I got the news, a wave of guilt washed over me. Even so, this was something my mother-in-law brought upon herself, and it was my father-in-law's choice. It wasn't really my place to get involved. The day before they were tearing down their house, I got a text from my mother-in-law. She wrote, "I've caused you so much difficulty, I truly have." She was telling me she'd soon be moving into a care home and probably wouldn't be able to go out anymore. Because of this, she wanted to apologize to me face-to-face one last time, asking if I'd come to the house before they demolished it that evening. The message showed a perfect demonstration of both humility and respect. I couldn't believe my ears that my usually self-important mother-in-law would say such things. Maybe being alone, abandoned by everyone, and facing life in a home for the elderly had made her change her tune. I, who had been feeling bad lately, wanted to fulfill my mother-in-law's last request when I thought about this. So that night, I went to visit their house, which would be destroyed the following day. Standing there in front of the house, I watched my mother-in-law approach from a distance. She waved at me and started jogging toward me, wanting to make sure I didn't have to wait. Then her speed seemed to gradually quicken, reaching her fastest pace as she neared me. Before I knew it, I was sprawled out on the lawn of their house. My stomach and back were aching, and when I looked down, my mother-in-law was sitting on top of my lower half. It's true, my mother-in-law had taken me down and I was sprawled in the flower beds. The instant this dawned on me, I was consumed by fear and I attempted to shout, but it was impossible because my mother-in-law moved behind me and covered my mouth with her hand. After that, I felt the pressure of her arm around my neck, specifically the carotid artery, and everything faded to black. When I woke up, it was still completely dark. It appeared that tape or something similar had been used, effectively blinding me. Also, the tape wasn't only over my eyes. My mouth and every one of my limbs were tied up as well. I could sense someone close by. Although I tried to yell for help, I could barely be heard. Still, maybe sensing I was awake, the person nearby began to speak. "You brought this all on yourself." It was my mother-in-law's voice. And I actually thought, this time, the third time, the charm, I really believed she'd changed. I am such an idiot. My mother-in-law's words had utterly fooled me. Despite the fact that Ron had advised me not to meet with his mother, I felt sorry for her and I came regardless. That's correct, Ron. Maybe he would see something amiss when he got back. Then it clicked. Ron was away on a work trip today. When Halia was stuck in the crawl space, I got in touch with Ron, and he immediately shortened what was supposed to be a week-long business trip to get back home. Because of his business trip, he had to go on another one to wrap things up. What was I supposed to do? While I was thinking hard about it, my mother-in-law started talking once more. "This is all you're doing. Since your arrival, my family has been breaking down little by little. I've alienated all the people I used to be close to, and in the end, everything crumbled. It's all your fault, so I'm going to make you vanish. I'm going to lock you in this house. Then tomorrow you'll be destroyed along with it." Am I doing this? It's plain to see. Since this family's fallen apart after you got here, if you're gone, my family will be okay again. I'm so smart. It seemed like my mother-in-law had completely lost it, but I couldn't concentrate on that. At this moment, my body could actually be destroyed tomorrow. What could I possibly do? My mind was completely consumed by nervousness and terror. I couldn't stop trembling. Paying no mind to how terrified I was, my mother-in-law announced, "Well, I'm going now. Thanks for everything," and then she departed. I tried to yell for help again and again, making sounds, but there was no voice. My mouth was covered with tape, and being stuck in the house anyway, it wouldn't matter. And so, without anyone noticing, tomorrow I'd be sliced in half by heavy equipment and leave this world. Well, thank goodness that didn't occur. While I was consumed by these dreadful thoughts and my fear was intensifying, I heard a sound from somewhere and a voice calling my name. Then that individual promptly arrived, asking if I was all right while aggressively removing the tape from my mouth. Even though the tape removal pulled at some of my hair, which stung, it was the least of my worries. The second I saw it was Halia who had rescued me, I just started bawling from the relief washing over me. "Halia, how did you find me?" I asked. Halia grinned, a playful glint in her eyes, and responded with a sort of understanding, maybe telepathically. "Actually, getting here was thanks to Ron. I could sense your incredible terror. I figured something bad had occurred, so I frantically got in touch with him, and once he mentioned you might be at his parents' place, I practically sprinted here. This is because you came to my aid," Halia said. As she said this, Halia finished taking off all the tape that had been holding me. After that, Halia and I got out of the house right before it got torn down, and we got ourselves to a safe location. Following that, we called Ron to tell him we would be making a police report, and Halia and I went to the police station, which resulted in my mother-in-law being taken into custody. As awful as it was that my mother-in-law was arrested, she'd brought it on herself. Ron told me not to dwell on it. There's no way things like, "I didn't think I'd be arrested," could work after everything she put me through. My mother-in-law was given a prison sentence and will be behind bars for a long time. While her mental health wasn't great, it wasn't viewed as bad enough to warrant consideration. They weren't going to be easy on her. The wounds I got from my mother-in-law's aggressive hug eventually got better, and I could go to Halia's wedding without any problems. Honestly, it was a really beautiful celebration. From this point forward, I am determined to put in the effort to safeguard the joy in my own life.